Okay, it's 5:45 and I will call this public meeting to order. Any declaration of interest or general nature thereof? Does anybody have an interest to declare? I see none. Moving forward with the purpose of the meeting, number 3 on the first agenda, which is the naming of a private lane, Edgewater Lane, proposed currently 514 1000 Thousand Islands Parkway, including 514A-E. So I'll read our disclosure for the planning meeting, or the public meeting, I should say, and then we will move forward with the comments from the planner and any questions. So personal information collected at this public hearing is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected to form part of the minutes, which are available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by applicant or staff, council members will have an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to public for comments and questions. When you speak, please provide your name and address for recording in the minutes. All comments should be directed to myself, the chair of the meeting. The applicant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions once all members of the public have made their submissions. If a person or public body would like to have an ability to appeal the decision of the council to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the township before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Okay, so Madam Planner, do you want to speak to this?
I'm just trying to get my screen so I can share it. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, sharing.
There we go. So through you, this is a public meeting with respect to the proposed naming for a lane that extends north from the parkway into lands known as the KOA lane right now. There are a number of lots that were created through consent that have access to their property from this lane, as shown in red on this air photo in front of you. Notice for this meeting was circulated to every property owner that abuts this lane. With respect to the proposed naming for the lane, there have been consultations with the Heritage Committee and with the owners in the area. The name suggested was provided by one of the owners in the area. There's been no input received otherwise with respect to the naming of this lane, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does council have any comments or questions for the planner? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
And thank you, Worship, and through you. Is this lane presently hard covered with any sort of treatment? I know that it's a fairly new road. It was redone there a few years back, but I was just wondering if it had a hard surface because of the KOA and the amount of traffic that goes back and forth. Thanks.
Through you, I can't speak to the standard of construction of the lane. It's a private road, so it's up to the people that have access on it to maintain and take care of the road. So my understanding is that it's a granular surface at this time.
Any further comments or questions for the planner? Are there any comments? If you can stop sharing your screen there, Madam Planner. We have one attendee, which is Matthew Tremblay. I don't know if Mr. Tremblay wants to speak to this particular item. If so, please use the raise your hand feature on the YouTube. We do have members of the public here this evening in council chambers. I don't see any hands going up at this point. Seeing none, we'll move forward with adjournment, and the motion to adjourn is coming from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the public meeting adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Okay. Calling this part of the public planning meeting to order at 5:49 p.m. Are there any declaration of interest or general nature thereof? Does anybody have an interest to declare? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the purpose of the meeting, which is 3.1 D14-2022-008. 11847 sorry, 1184738 Canada Inc. Asterisk Engineering Corporation, 481 County Road 2. And this is a rescheduled meeting from date of September 6th. So I believe, unless we have any other people who've joined, or do we have any other attendees? I'm just trying to figure out whether I need to, no, okay. I don't need to read the planning blurb again. So we'll go right to the planner in regards to this matter.
Thank you. Through you. This is an application for zoning amendment for the property located at 481 County Road 2. The application is requesting to rezone the property to allow a contractor's yard for a tree service on the property. On the screen in front of you is the proposed site plan for the property. Notice for the meeting was sent out and advertised in accordance with the Planning Act. I would note that the meeting was rescheduled because initially the requirements for the providing of notice weren't met, which is why the meeting was deferred until this evening. There have been public submissions received with respect to this application concerning the compatibility of the land use with surrounding residential uses, the noise of the potential operation, and the storage of outdoor materials. Those letters are included in the public meeting report that was circulated to council in advance of this meeting. The property is zoned rural in the official plan, which does allow for light industrial uses that are compatible with the surrounding area in the rural land use designation. So the application for zoning amendment is before you for public meeting. I would note that this is not on the following agenda or on council's agenda for a recommendation this evening. And the purpose of this meeting is strictly to receive input from the public with respect to the application, to allow staff the opportunity to address the comments with the applicant. All of the information with respect to the public input that's been received to date has been provided to the applicant. And we will be requesting that written submission be provided to address all of them in detail.
Thank you, Madam Planner. Questions from the council? Councillor Maybe, then Councillor Grau.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I basically have three questions. And I did notice that there is a noise level report in there. And it indicated something around transport type noise, but knowing a wood chipper and how much noise it can make, it just seemed like it was a little perhaps low in the noise level category, something to be concerned about with houses being as close as they are. Second question is how much wood will be stored on site and chipped material, excuse me, because all the branches do get chipped and put on somewhere, typically on the property of this type of business. And then the other one is the hours of operation. And I know it indicated on the report also, but with possible emergencies and call outs for a business like this, I'm just wondering if there's any mitigation to hours being stipulated within our plan. Thank you.
So with respect to the noise levels and if they're conservative, that's a question that we will have to put back to the applicant. If noise is a concern, there's always the option to have the noise study peer reviewed as well by a qualified professional on behalf of the township. With respect to how much wood will be placed on site, that's a question that was also raised through the public input. We don't have an answer for that, but we'll be following up with the applicant with respect to that. And regarding the hours of operation, that is not something that we can regulate through the zoning bylaw. However, we do have the township noise bylaw that regulates when activities can occur on site. And operations would be required to stop by 7 o'clock at night based on the bylaw.
Okay, Councillor Guerrero, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Your Worship, Councillor maybe touched on the question I had, and it was the accumulation of chips and wood and so on, because the environmental study and everything, I breezed through pages of it, and none of those reports really addressed that sort of thing. And I've driven by many of these, and they can tend to accumulate. And I was wondering if we haven't addressed that, perhaps at the site plan control level, that could be addressed in terms of berms or fencing or something of that nature. At first, I didn't think too much about this, and then I read the opponents of it, and it made me very thoughtful of this property. I don't find that a quarter of a quarter section isn't a huge piece of property when you start carving out the environmental sensitive areas here. So I read that there's room for 20 large vehicles and so on. And I would find it hard to believe that that type of business wouldn't accumulate a significant amount of wood chips. Now, they could turn them, if they're telling me they're going to sell them into the pellet world, fine, but I doubt they will. So year after year after year after year, where does that all go? Thank you very much.
Madam Planner?
So again, these are all questions that we can bring back with better answers once we have the information. Just to elaborate on your comment around mitigation, berms and fencing. At this point, those are also items that we can look at through site plan control as well, or not site plan control, zoning, including the requirements for fences of a certain height or density, screening of open storage areas, limiting heights of piles and those types of things. So site plan control works with zoning. So some of those things we can require through zoning and then implement through site plan control as well.
Follow up?
And just one quick question through you, Your Worship. Marnie, we have often minimum setback distances from farms and whatnot, and I know we ran into this with a kennel. Does this apply in any way to this business, minimum setbacks from residential areas there?
Some, through your worship, some of that comes down to looking at the noise study and the nature of the business and the operating characteristics. So that's something that we need to look at in detail through the review of the application to determine if there are areas of influence that we need to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Foti.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to our planner. There's a lot of assumptions made here with few details. And that leaves me, like my fellow colleagues, I suspect from their questions, a lot of questions. When I see a lot of fleets, that's what I do day to day. Is there any application there for on-site storage of fuel? Diesel fuel in particular? I'm assuming these large trucks are running on diesel. That brings into play a whole lot of other questions if that's the case. And like my colleagues, because a lot of this is assumption, if approved at some point, the tonnage here could be extensive. In my previous life, I've been on sites that have serious tonnage on wood chips. It's not pretty, nor does it smell good. For those that have had the pleasure of not disparaging the town of Dryden, but if you walk or drive through areas that handle pulp and paper, it has an odor all its own, and wood chips are not far off that odor. So I think there needs to be a lot of insight put into this site before we go too much further down this rabbit hole. Thank you.
Councillor Oki.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I'm sure my colleagues on the Conservation Authority board would be a little concerned about similar things such as leachite. As things decompose, they tend to liquefy, and the drainage doesn't look like it's been well planned to me. I can't see the detail on this map, but I know there's an environmental study, but it just said in some alarm bells off when I'm looking at almost all points of the compass, there's marshland, which tells me there's drainage. And I'm wondering, 10 years down the road, are people shaking their fist at our memory because we didn't think a little more about the drainage from this place? Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Given the topography that we see, is this actually the best location on that particular property? I know there are some restrictions around them, but it seems to me there's a whole lot of property there to work with.
Through your worship, this is the application and the location that's in front of us. I can say that in looking at the site and the surrounding zoning and official plan designations with respect to the wetlands and the water courses, that where this is proposed is in a location of the property that avoids all of the natural hazards that are on the property. And the Conservation Authority has indicated that they don't have any concerns with the location. That being said, to build on the comments that Councillor Oki has provided, The Conservation Authority would be involved in detail with respect to looking at stormwater management and grading for the site, should it be approved and would proceed to be built out. But those are all details that we need to look at and bring more information back to council in a comprehensive report.
So on that vein, Madam Planner, do you recall on this particular piece of property, if there is an additional area perhaps further back from the road, further back from the housing areas that might be appropriate that it could go in, or is that where the natural hazards limit that particular?
So looking at the schedule of the official plan that identifies the natural hazards, the green area is provincially significant wetland. The brown is unstable soils. This brown line is floodplain. So really the only area of the property that is developable is within this area here.
But based on the plan that's been provided, it's closer to that little jut that comes out towards the road. So what I'm asking is I guess based on what the secondary map is that it could be moved back slightly?
There may be potential to consider that, and we can certainly bring it up with the applicant.
Okay. I see Councillor Jameson and then back to Councillor Oki. Oh, you're good? Okay, Councillor Oki, go ahead.
Just based on what Madam Planner said, Your Worship, and through you, heavy vehicles have a way of creating water courses, especially in the springtime and the late fall. Is there a plan to pave this or use heavy gravel to stabilize the surface?
That's yet to be determined. That's a site plan matter in terms of looking at the surface treatment of the roads and that type of thing. So that would come through the grading plan.
Thank you.
Any, Councillor Foti, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. It's obvious there's a number of houses in very close proximity to what's being proposed here. I'm assuming and knowing a few faces, that's why these people are here in attendance tonight. I'd like to hear their comments, if any. Thank you.
I will address them as soon as we're done with the council questions. Are there any further comments or questions from council? Okay, I'm going to check online. So we still have Mr. Tremblay. We'll go with individuals here in the gallery. If there's anybody that would like to ask questions or make comments, go ahead.
Good evening, councillors. Taking my time, your time, letting me take your time. So this is your official plan. This is the official plan of the township of Leeds and Thousand Islands. It was implemented to protect all landowners against unexpected developments. This is your rule book. This is the rules, and they are quite clear. Throughout my presentation, I will point out areas that I don't believe the development proposed by Eco Tree Service comply with your rule book. Section 1.3, the purpose of the official plan outlines matters of provincial interest and includes protection of ecological systems, agricultural resources, appropriate location of growth and development, and the promotion of built form that is well designed and encourages a sense of place. Section 2, the following fundamental elements of the basis of the official plan. It references natural beauty and the environment. It references ground and surface water. Resources are essential to the community's physical and economical health. Many residents rely on groundwater sources for potable water supplies. All water resources require protection and wise use. You should consider Leggs Creek and the groundwater surrounding the development and the impact on residential wells that would be directly impacted. Current trends for development and redevelopment in desirable but sensitive locations. Ongoing and future development pressure will require increasingly diligent review and assessment of applications to ensure that new development blends in and results in minimal negative impacts. After speaking with my neighbors, some of which are here, that are impacted by this development, the common feeling is that this zoning change and development does not blend in, nor does it have minimal impact. This plan also recognizes the desire of some residents of a rural lifestyle and allows for limited commercial and industrial development where appropriate. The development of an industrial tree service business amid 6 residential properties is not appropriate and does not promote a rural lifestyle. Section 3, the objectives of the official plan. Number 17, the community's water resources shall be protected. I feel that this is an important point and should not be overlooked. The prepared planning justification report notes that the development has been designed to be sympathetic to the respect and natural heritage resources that are present on the subject lands and the surrounding area. The property generally slopes from north to south towards Leggs Creek. There's also an unnamed tributary that is located on the west side of the property, which flows south into Leggs Creek. It also acknowledges that the subject property is located within rural area typified by the presence of rural residential uses, farmland, and natural heritage resource features such as wooded areas and Leggs Creek. This is a proposed industrial development that will have large machinery, fuel tanks, high volumes of traffic, outdoor storage of materials that include decaying and rotting wood chips and wood. This has significant potential impact on the environment. The environmental study repeatedly commented that some of the items could not be fully assessed at the time of the study and that only superficial assessments could be made. In the closing remarks, it states that due to the time of the study, was completed, the assessment was based on the interpretation of satellite imagery. This imagery clearly shows the developed area directly adjacent to the unnamed creek that runs into Leggs Creek, and undoubtedly will impact area water and property that is currently designated as provincially significant wetland in the township's official plan. Section 4.6, General Land Use Policies, Compatibility and Built Form. Introducing new development in existing areas requires a sensitive approach and consideration of the area's established uses and character. Zoning bylaw help to ensure that compatible uses are co-located and incompatible uses are appropriately separated. It is also important that proposed development be compatible with existing surrounding uses and built form. Compatible development means development that, although not necessarily the same as existing development in the vicinity, it is complementary or enhances the established community and coexists with existing development without causing undue adverse impacts on surrounding properties. I would suggest that this proposal that includes 2 structures that are approximately 600 square meters each, parking for over 30 passenger and commercial vehicles with outdoor storage of wood and wood chips is not compatible with the existing 175 to 275 square meter homes that surround the proposed site and will have an undue adverse impact on those same neighboring homes. This leads to section 4.61. Council shall be satisfied that the proposed development is compatible with surrounding uses, built form, and general character of the area. Compatibility should be assessed based on the following criteria. Height and massing, building height and massing and scale should be assessed based on planning or existing use of adjacent properties. This proposed development is clearly not compatible with surrounding uses, built form, or the general character of the area. Section 57.2, industrial uses in rural area. Industrial uses should be appropriate to the proposed location, having regard to potential impacts on neighboring land uses and surrounding physical features. Industrial uses may be permitted north of the 401, especially where proposed development is an extension of existing industrial use. The proposed rural area rezoning to rural special to permit an industrial build has significant negative impact on the neighboring residential properties and is not an extension of an existing industrial development. Adequate buffering will be provided between industrial uses and neighboring sensitive land areas, example, residential uses. And this proposed development provides little or no buffering between the development and my home. In the noise study, the attached noise study concluded that based on hours of operation between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m., that noise levels required no noise control measures. But it also concluded that if repairs to trucks and equipment was conducted after 7 p.m., based on it, they referenced the City of Kingston noise bylaw, additional noise control measures may be required. This acknowledges that the same noise levels that are acceptable during the day are not acceptable during the evening. For shift workers like myself and others in the area, during the day is when we're trying to sleep, and therefore noise controls need to be in place should this development be approved. The current location of Eco Tree Service is located at 2375 Highway 15, Kingston. There are several issues not mentioned in the proposal that exist at their current location and can clearly be seen from the highway, as seen in photographs that I sent electronically. They include 3 large fuel tanks directly adjacent to the office. And while I was there, a 5-ton truck towing a large wood chipper stopped at these tanks and fueled up. Also visible from the highway are large mountains of wood chips and decaying piles of wood, some covered in deteriorating tarps. There are, based on their appearance, trucks and equipment no longer in use, rotting in place. This is not attractive and certainly will detract from the well-maintained personal properties surrounding the development should you approve it. A rural industrial zone would permit a contractor's shop or yard. Whether property is zoned rural industrial or rural exemption, this application is being compared to a contractor's shop. This development is not a shop. It is an industrial development that is not appropriate in a residential area. This rezoning would have long-term impact on this residential area. I would challenge anybody at this table to accept this development beside their home. Please do not allow it next to mine. Thank you.
Okay, so Madam Planner, you've got your notes from that. Okay. And we still have one attendee on. I'm not sure if that attendee wants to contribute anything or ask a question. I don't see a hand going up. So are there any further? Yes, you please come ahead, sir, and state your name.
Good evening. My name is Tim Hawkins. I live quite close to where the area where the applicant is applying. I live at 490 County Road 2, about 200 meters from where the place is planned, or the future is planned to be. I want to address, I didn't do as Steve Garrod did and compared the application to the official plan, but I did take a look at some of the reports to see what the justification was for this project. And there's 2 things that I looked at that struck home to me as not sounding right. First, it had to do with the noise. Almost every councillor here, worship, spoke to the noise issues. And I come from a background, I've spent 10 years in noise abatement industry. And also I've had the good fortune of operating a wood chipper. As councillor may be addressed, they are noisy. And when you look at the noise impact study states that wood chippers are at 106 decibels. And that's a fairly loud noise. But one thing that's not very well known about decibels is that it's not a linear scale. So when you have something that's 90 decibels versus 100 decibels, it's not like 10% more, it's 10 times more, because a decibel scale is logarithmic. Very hard to sort of grasp mentally. again, 10 years in the noise abatement industry. It took me a while to figure it out. But basically, when you have a 10 or 20 decibel variation in a report, it really is significant. So when I saw in the noise impact study that the wood chipper was stipulated at 106 decibels, I said, that sounds really low. And took a look at Vermeer. Vermeer, I think you may not know the name, but you certainly know the product. Look at this little picture here. And you see these yellow brush chippers towed behind almost every tree service that you know. Vermeer is in my mind, a market leader in these so-called brush chippers. So I did some research on their website, and they're legitimate enough to actually stipulate their sounds, the sound power that comes from these wood chippers. Small ones have 116 decibels, so it's pretty close. It's only 10 times noisier than what the noise impact study stipulates. Some of the larger ones come in at 126 decibels. That's 20 times louder than you would than what the noise impact study is entering into the report. When you look at their spreadsheet that they have, I think that's on page 4, you see that their anticipated noise and various very well placed measurement points around the area was within 7 to 11 decibels of being okay. But when you take just that one chipper, that chipper noise, we are not okay. We will be over the noise impact study's recommended level for noise emissions coming from that site. So that I would challenge the noise impact study and suggest that saying that the noise impact study is concluding it's correct. I would say that their base information is incorrect and brings it into concern. My other issue has to do with, of course, almost everybody talked about the wood chips. When I got this notice, I actually took a drive around the neighborhood, well, actually the county, to take a look at what different sites looked like. The tree service industry is pretty fragmented, quite frankly. There's a lot of sole proprietors that have a chainsaw and a wood chipper maybe, and they call themselves tree services, and they work out of their home, and they're fine. You know, their neighbors look like, it looks like a standard neighborhood house. But there are others that are frankly eyesores. And one of the places that I saw, and I think Steve addressed it in his presentation, one of those is in the name of the applicant. So I know it's very difficult to say, well, if you're going to do this over in Kingston, are you going to do the same over here in the township? But that's an issue. I would suggest I know all of you are campaigning, congratulations and good luck. But if you do have a moment, it's not far. It's about a 15-minute drive from here, or 20-minute drive from here, and it's worthwhile taking a look at. I also was very concerned about again, looking at the appearance of the things. I was concerned about the chips, and I think one councillor addressed, well, where is it going to go? And when you take a look at all the different setbacks because of environmental issues, you notice that there's not a whole lot of room on that property to put anything. Once you put in a large, what is it, Steve, 600 square meter building, two of them with a coverall and a parking lot of undetermined paved or gravel for 30 vehicles, there's not a lot of room for the chips. There is one spot, it's a little triangle right on the side of the road. And that's just sort of setback from the MTO setback. And that, if I was a working person, that'd be a great spot for me to dump my chips, because then I wouldn't have to take them all the way into the yard. The other spot would be the parking lot. And that doesn't make sense to me to park your wood chips where you're going to park your vehicles. There are issues with the smells, environmental issues with organic fluid flowing out of these things. But I'm just concerned about the placement. And as a resident, I really wouldn't want to have a big pile of chips standing outside, right outside my door, basically where I walk my dog. The applicant is not the only one who has mountains of chips. There's another one in Elizabethtown, Kitley. If you want, again, if you're heading out in that direction, just head up toward up 38 and take a look at that and see whether or not you want that in your township. I don't. And again, as a resident and as a homeowner, I don't think that's going to contribute to the current or future value of my home. Thank you.
So Councillor Olkey, you have a question, and then Councillor Gorell.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just maybe two statements. And my background had a lot to do with noise. And a single round from a howitzer is 171 decibels. That's one shot. So you're talking about 160 decibels sustained. It's got to be a different.
126. I believe.
126
Decibels sustained.
sustained. So the cumulative effect of that thing is probably pretty close to artillery barrage on the ears. If you know any artillerymen, you know that they're always saying, pardon? What? Okay. The
You see
other-
this, Councilor Oakley?
Yeah.
What?
Counselor Garrell.
I-
Oh, sorry, you have one more comment. My apologies.
And this is maybe be beating a drum a little bit, but I've always said that township like ours could probably use an industrial site or an industrial park where this sort of activity would be more appropriate away from residences.
Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Garrell, go ahead.
Thank you. And thanks, Mr. Hawkins, for your words. You had mentioned at the beginning, are you about 200 meters, did you say, from this proposed development?
200, 300. I see it from my front. I see it
Sure.
from my kitchen window.
No, the reason I'm asking, I'd like the planning department to understand, because we do have minimum setback distances. And I don't have them in front of me, but that's a very important issue. Thank you very much for
I would
pointing it out.
withdraw the 200 meters then, because in the noise impact study, they did take measurements from the various homes.
Oh, yes.
And our home was not taken into consideration. So I suggest that maybe I am a little bit further away if they did not feel it would be an impact.
Thank you again.
Okay. So I don't have any hands up on the screen. I don't have any hands up on the table. I have a hand up by the planner.
Thank you. I just wanted to wrap up and give a little bit of a summary in terms of next steps for your information. So thank you for your comments tonight. And thank you as well for submitting them in writing so that we have them. They have all been provided to the applicant and they were provided in advance of the meeting this evening. Knowing the public input that was received, as I said to council in the opening, this is not in front of council for a recommendation this evening. So we will be going back to the applicant to work through the comments that have been provided by yourselves as well as members of council. We'll bring a report forward at a future meeting. I don't have a timeline for that at this point because there's a lot of information to be addressed. But because you have all provided input this evening, your names will be on a list and you'll be notified of any future upcoming meetings. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that you will be kept informed and you will be in the loop in terms of any future activity on this file. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the planning department. You're welcome.
Okay. So with that, I believe that covers 3.2 planning report SR -139-22, the application for rezoning as well. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure that we covered both items. So with that, we have a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the public meeting adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Thank you, everyone.